Hi, taking a break walking the dog who decides to show you her ass. Sorry about that. I'm going to talk about what makes a good hi-fi reviewer. I talked about reviews before, but now about the reviewer. And you might have heard the maxim, writing about music is like dancing about architecture. And I think it applies here too. It's it's hard. You got to be a really good communicator to be a good hi-fi reviewer. It is challenging to put the sort of a correct representative idea of sound, especially subtle nuances of sound, into someone else's head through words alone. But yeah, to have anything to communicate at all, if you're a good communicator, you obviously also have to be a good listener, to pay really close attention to sound in all of its forms. And by all of its forms, I mean there are different ways to listen to music. You've got to listen for different things, and you've got to be able to switch, and you've got to be able to then sort of meld it all together. And that is a type of listening that sort of by definition is different from how you listen recreationally. And that is problematic because the point of hi-fi is to listen recreationally. So why does a reviewer do something other than that? Well, a reviewer has to like speed run the consumer experience and sort of get to like conclusions you might get 3 years into ownership of a product. They have to do in like 3 weeks. So you have to listen differently. You have to like push hard and sort of strain a little bit in terms of how you listen. So you got to be a good listener, but you also got to be a good listener to your own emotional response as a reviewer. There are reviewers that are really good at describing sound, like incredibly attentive to sound itself and can characterize it in really good ways. And that obviously has tremendous value if you're a hi-fi reviewer. But then they don't seem to pay attention to their own emotional response to that sound. And like to me, the emotional response is why I listen to music. So as a consumer of reviews, I kind of want a reviewer that leans into their emotions and leans into their humanity a little bit, so that I can get to know them, so that I get to understand how a product made them feel when they listen to music through it. Because you can look at like a frequency response curve and like, yeah, that's different from that. But like, what is the emotional difference? And two that might have the same looking measurements might still feel different because there are differences that aren't shown in those measurements. So, and at Stereophile, we do measure products that we review, but we still do the observational sort of subjective review part because there are other things that you can convey. And those other things, to me at least, live in the realm of emotion. Now, maybe one day I will somehow outgrow this and decide that I don't want to blend too much of my emotional response into this to be more objective, sort of neutral observer style. I doubt it though. I'm new at reviewing, so who knows? This evolution of mine is only beginning, but I've been a consumer of reviews for decades, and at this point I kind of know what I like, I think. A reviewer that just takes a set of reference tracks and listens to the same stuff every time and just lists off the performance on some standardized parameters like bass and mids and highs and dynamics and stereo image and things like that. I think they are treating the product under review as a tool or utility rather than as a pleasure machine. And maybe the right thing is a blend of both. I suspect it's a blend of both, but if you're omitting one side of that equation, I think something's missing from the review, and I think it will not be as good at informing the consumer about the dog is now chewing on a stick outside of frame. That review won't be as good at conveying to the consumer whether that's a product worth pursuing for them. You would add more such value if you talked more about emotions, I think. And there's a different issue with sort of omitting or excluding your emotional response from the review, because if you are trying to like be neutral and be this neutral observer and not talk about how you feel about something, you are sort of implicitly saying that what you're conveying is objective truth in some way, because a subjective review is never objective truth. You're one person listening, and we hear differently and we appreciate different things, and so on. Like if you can tell that, well, there's 1 dB dip at 6 kilohertz. Cool story, bro. We have measurements for that. Like I don't need the subjective sort of listening review to tell me about the frequency response. I want you to tell me about how the frequency response impacts your experience of music through that product. That's what's important. And that's emotions. So I kind of want that. So what else? That's a lot of talk about emotion. What else should a good reviewer bring to the table? I think reviewing is a lot of work. You're not just sitting down, hitting play, taking a couple of notes on what you hear. You gotta be really thorough and meticulous and ambitious, I think, because you might need to do a lot of work to place the speakers right. Like that's the big one. That takes a lot of time and effort. Sometimes they're really heavy, so literally physical effort, but it's also just being very precise with placement, marking down, giving it time to listen to each new position so that you're not just reacting to something being different, but you're able to get through that. And is it better or worse? If it's better, what is it better at? Other drawbacks and so on. And you might need to do similar sort of exercises with other types of equipment. So if you're, sloppy and lazy, you're not going to be a good reviewer. A good reviewer reads the manual. A good reviewer, really tries to get a product or find out where a product performs its best. And you're not going to do that just plugging it in, listening for a while, and going, you got to put some work in, probably. And even if it sounds amazing right from the beginning, maybe the exercise will get it to sound even better, or maybe you will be able to reveal a flaw if you go through the motions and test it in different ways and be ambitious about how you try to evaluate the product. So that's important for a reviewer. Oh, and it goes without saying that I appreciate a reviewer that has a really wide and preferably nerdy taste in music. It doesn't have to cover every genre, but should cover enough breadth that it will put the product under review through its paces. You should have some music that is very dense. You should have some music that has very precise spatial positioning. You should have music with very complex textures. We should have music where the sense of timing is crucial to its value, and you should cover those types of things through whatever means you enjoy. You should not listen to music for review purposes that you don't enjoy. That's no fun. That's no fun for the reviewer. It's no fun for the reader or viewer either. But if you just listen to sparse soundstage lounge jazz, yeah, that's not going to tell anyone a whole lot. I also think reviewers should be reasonably technically adept, not necessarily so that they can offer credible criticism to the sort of signal path design of the internals of a DAC. And besides at Stereophile, we have measurements, so we have technical staff that handles the sort of evaluation of technical performance through the measurements. But I think you should be technical as a reviewer so that you don't misunderstand features, and so that you don't misuse the product, and so that you don't misattribute some performance metric to something implausible. I've seen reviews where someone goes, well, it did this and that, and that's probably because of so-and-so, and you're like, oh no, that's not how that works, and you don't want that. So you should be well-read enough to navigate that stuff, which is hard. I'm fighting with certain aspects of technical know-how for component design. And like I'm learning as fast as I can, but thankfully also at Stereophile, we have really strong editors and technical editors that will set you straight if you say something in the review that doesn't seem right. So that's good. But if you're running solo, that's harder. It's more work on you. Like it's a lot of things you gotta handle yourself. And there's also like this educational aspect of hi-fi reviewing to in the reviewer's own words, so not just repeating marketing copy from the manufacturer. In the reviewer's own words, talk about how it functions and what effect that has. Like, can the reviewer talk credibly about, you know, what the pros and cons are for a dipole speaker versus a box speaker or whatever? That kind of stuff I think is important because it will help the reader or viewer get information out of the review that helps guide them in terms of like what type of product do they seek. Not necessarily whether that specific product is right for them, but like get insights about product types and categories. So if you find someone that checks these boxes, a reviewer that checks these boxes, that when you read or watch their content, it is informative, it is entertaining, it is insightful, it is like technically knowledgeable and all of that, then keep track of the name of that reviewer and follow their work. Like read or watch other things they put out, even if the product isn't necessarily for you, because you will pick up on, you know, other insights about technology, other, you know, music recommendations, other comparisons to other products that might become useful in the future, and you get to calibrate your understanding of that reviewer's preferences. And then when you get a chance, listen to things that they have reviewed and see how that aligns with your impressions. And the good thing is, if a reviewer is consistent and good at expressing these things and like have a good grasp of what they like and are able to convey that, you don't need to share their preferences to get a lot of value out of it. There's this one reviewer, I don't think I should mention names, but that has been, you know, in the industry forever. I've read his stuff for like 25 years at least. And he is so entertaining and educational and consistent that even though my preferences are not at all like his, I can just apply this sort of mental offset from how he's liking something and know with very high certainty whether it's for me or not. And that has held true for a very long time. So yeah, we don't share the same taste. Not entirely different, but like there are distinctive differences in what we prefer. And it's one of my favorite reviewers because he is so consistent, he is so entertaining, and I learn so much from his work. Now, am I missing something important here? Are there other traits or qualities that you seek or appreciate in reviewers that I should aspire to myself or that I could learn from in others? Let me know in the comments. I'm here to get better, so I would really appreciate sort of pointers to the stuff you prefer. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how all reviewers are bought, biased, or both. Because that seems to be the consensus in certain corners of the internet, that surely that's the lay of the land. So if you want to see what I think about that viewpoint, stick around. And otherwise, you're free to go. You don't have to watch anything, but I would appreciate a little thumbs up if this was at all of any use or entertainment for you. Thanks for watching. See ya.